try not to clown me too hard for these takes. The Overwatch League 5-player deadline has now passed, and seeing as how every team has enough players for a 5-man lineup, I figure it is a good time to go over each team and give my thoughts on how they stack up to each other. It is worth noting that the signings of the off-season aren't done yet. From this list alone, the San Francisco Shock, Houston Outlaws and Vancouver Titans aren't done with their signings yet. Plus, we still have 3.5 months left in the off-season. On top of that, teams can make moves after getting their hands on Overwatch 2. So expect this to be outdated quickly. Either way, let's get started. Number 12 is the London Spitfire. They have made some pretty significant upgrades. Poco is much better than Molfig unless he lost his form over the past year, and their backline of Admiral and Provide is actually a good one, if not super top tier. However, I just can't trust this team too much. They have kept 3 players from their abysmal 1-win 2021 season, including Heady, which most people considered one of the biggest weaknesses of the team. I like the moves. Also worth mentioning is that Christopher is head coach and is another upgrade, but ultimately they have not changed enough for me to trust them, though I doubt they go near winless again. Number 11 is the Florida Mayhem. Such massive downgrades it's almost laughable. Checkmate is fairly middling and has barely played anything but main tank as of late. Mira looked okay on the Glads, but was benched outside of niche picks most of the time. Animo hasn't looked very good the past few seasons. They have some promising pieces. Hydron is good enough to clutch out at least a few wins. Someone and Adam should make a good tanklin, and Simajet has a lot of promise. He was fairly strong in contenders despite being on bad ping. But the real reason I put them above London is Gunba. Gunba has historically been very good at scouting and making a complete team despite hardships. He was able to put together a very strong Valiant squad in 2020 despite having pieces that many considered mediocre to bad. He has had a miss though in 2019, and has been in the Valorant scene for the past year, so I can't put too much faith in him, but it gives me faith in the team to punch out more so than London. Now, there is a tier break here. Yes, I think while these two will trade wins regularly, beating any team above them would be considered an upset. I'll indicate these breaks whenever they come up from now on. Number 10 is the Vancouver Titans. I want to preface this by saying their roster is incomplete as of now. After they round out their roster a bit, I could see them surpassing the next 2 members in my ranking. However, as of now I can't do that seeing as they have a mere 5 players, and frankly I'm not too big a fan of their starting 5. Shockwave and Aspire are both phenomenal players that deserve a shot at the league, but there's only one issue. They are both hitscan. While Shockwave is a great echo, and Aspire is a good tracer player, they both fundamentally share the same hero pool. Same kind of thing with their tanklin. They have a mere 1 tank, and he isn't even in contention for best of his role like Soul is doing with Smurf. Hell, even their support line is lacking by not accounting for a potential double flex meta. It's just too small of a roster, which can be fixed depending on who they pick up or how many new players they decide to sign. The next question is the coaching staff. They have the same coaching staff. The staff that went 1-15 last year. If that doesn't worry you, I don't know what will. Finally, Aztec I feel isn't as good as the other players on this roster. Shockwave, Aspire and Maze are all stars, but Aztec lived in Lastro's shadow for all of last year. Overall there are a lot of questions in this roster, but I have confidence they can sort them out and succeed. Shockwave and Aspire are a top DPS line in North America and should keep them competitive. Next, number 9. Paris Eternal. Sorry Eli, but I am not high on Paris. They kept almost their entire team from last year, though they replaced both Tsana and Onigot with Glister, and replaced Get Amazed with Mobaji. While I think Glister is definitely an upgrade over Onigod, he is going to need to do a lot, becoming the flanker specialist, a hitscan and potentially even a projectile to pair with Naga at times. Glister is great and very flexible. He has a killer hitscan and Sombra and has even shown the ability to play Tracer and some projectiles in contenders. But frankly he will need to elevate the team well above their limits, because I am very uncertain about the state of the team. They have their entire roster pretty much from last year, but the issue there is, they were top tier last year. The only team in the league I would say don't need any upgrades or changes is Shanghai, and that's because they have everything covered for the most part and, well, They were by far the best team in the league last year. Paris went 8-8, 4 of those wins were against London and Vancouver and 1 against Justice when they were in their weird phase of not playing Decay. They had some quality wins, but I am not convinced that they were a top team. Losing Get Amaze is potentially damaging too. He was a big reason why they were able to stay focused and get those upsets in the first place. And replacing him for a full Korean staff for a mostly European team doesn't bring me too much hope. Finally, Da isn't a tank that will do well in 5v5 in my opinion. He is smart, but mechanically he is the worst of the bunch. And I feel like the game will favor individually skilled players or players who are consistently good if not dominant at anything they play. Da is neither, which worries me a bit. Vestoda should be okay though he is a bit inflexible. They will definitely not get worse gameplay-wise. Blister is a significant upgrade, being consistently better than Onigod at his peak. Plus the entire team should be in on lower ping that could enhance their overall play. And most of the players on this squad are good, with a great support line, but they really worry me. Yet another tier break here. We just ended the tier of the low-tier teams. You can call this the lower mid-tier teams. Next up, number 8, the Washington Justice. I want to preface this by saying that the DPS line is cracked. Decay is still one of the best DPS in the world. Assassin has his highs and lows, but was quite good last year on Echo and Somber, and Happy was an amazing DPS for both the Charge and Houston. This is definitely an upper half DPS line, but the rest of the roster is where it slips a bit. But that's where my high praise ends. Mag is an elite main tank, but is slightly inflexible, not being that elite on the Oriza and Hammond. Their support line is more of a mess than before, their Starflex support not being eligible until halfway through the season, leaving them with Opener and Krillin. A duo considered pretty low tier by Overwatch League standards, which makes it hard for me to put them highly. And the coaching staff, they kept 2 out of 3 of their old coaches in the disastrous 2021 Washington Justice. Very worrying, and I am not a fan at all. While they did pick up Tidalo, which is an upgrade, but I still can't trust them. Overall, the Justice upgraded their DPS and coaching, but their downgrades at tank and especially support are too big to ignore. Which is why I am putting them in their own tier. They have the potential to pop off and join the upper leagues, and like they will once Vigilante comes of age, there are way too many questions to trust them despite their elite DPS line. Number 7 is the Boston Uprising. These guys I am excited for. After making some massive upgrades while sticking with their core, they have a new look. Striker and Victoria is a beastly DPS line, though Victoria is a bit below a lot of other hitskins, and honestly I'm not too high on Valentine after his mediocre rookie season. They have one of the most flexible tanklings out there. Between Marvel and Punk they can play about anything. Then the support line is godly. Faith was quietly one of the better main supports last year, putting out consistently great performances on Brig and Lucio. While Crimzo was one of the better players for Houston last year, Eva McD was good for Hangzhou in their pretty poor year. I'm not too high on Marvel, however, who's been more or less benched for the past 2 years outside of the 2020 playoff run. While I'd love to see him pop off and prove himself as he has the perfect hero pool, we've never seen him be able to prove himself, especially at main tank as of late. Also not a fan of the fact that they've kept the same coaching staff considering how middling the team was last year. Next, number 6, the Houston Outlaws. Keep in mind that these guys could move up a tier depending on who they sign, as they aren't finished yet, but oh boy are these guys gonna be good. On paper they have one of the better DPS lines in the league. Dante, Pelican and Zen Godly. Pelican especially is hot off of his top 2 finish last season. While Piggy is currently their sole tank, he is very good, having an incredible Sigma and an above-average Dva and Zarya. Their support line is a bit worrying considering they haven't picked up a main support, and God forbid we end up with the Jersey again, but Astro and Iris is an absurdly good flex support duo. Honestly, this roster feels like it has a lot of potential, but is simply incomplete. There is not enough flexibility at the tank position or the support position to put them any higher despite how cracked their roster is so far. Also, I'd like to see them make some coaching additions. Junk Bunk and maybe Jake are good, but more than 2 coaches are needed, which ironically connects to our number 5 team, the Atlanta Reign. They made some pretty major changes. Unfortunately a lot of it was downgrades, but honestly I don't see the quality of the team changing much. Nero is definitely a downgrade over Pelican, but his projectile heroes aren't far off. Venom is a downgrade from Edson, but can definitely be developed, and the G and Ultraviolet are around the same level as Mesa and Iris, if not better. The only real concern here is the lack of coaches, with Legit moving into a managerial role and Under leaving to the Gladiators. The only coaches are Sephi and Danny. While these two coaches worked on the Reign during their playoffs run and deserve credit, their loss could hurt them in a time of constant change. Hopefully the self-coaching that allegedly happens from players can make up for it. The other issue I can see coming up is Gator and Venom's inflexibility. Gator is heavily reliant on Hawk to perform, frankly, and he isn't very good at Winston or Wrecking Ball, while Venom has long been known as a tracer one-trick. Both need a lot of work to prove they can provide the depth needed to be top tier in Overwatch 2. Next up, number 4, the Toronto Defiant. They made massive upgrades everywhere. Finale is comparable to Naced, and although is likely around the same as Aspire if not better. Muzz is a very flexible and great main tank alongside Hopper, who can play anything to a decently high level. Twilight and Chorong is a top 5 support line in the entire league, most likely. The Philadelphia Fusion 2020 gang is mostly together. They seem very strong with upset potential for the top 3, but a few things hold them back for me. First off is the DPS line. While Hisu and Aldo should make for a solid duo, they are well behind many other teams, honestly comparable to some a tier or 2 below them. They have a bit to prove before they convince me otherwise. Secondly, no second flex support in case of that meta. While Chorong can probably take over for it, he is unproven. Other than that, they are looking real good, but not quite on the top tier, as there is another tier break here. Number 3. The San Francisco Shock. These guys are incomplete, but absolutely deadly. The common theme with the Shock is people doubting them, saying there's a good chance that the rookies underperform, so you can't rate them too highly. To that I say, pish posh. While it's a possibility, it is highly unlikely, and these rookies are cracked out of their mind. Proper, for example, was considered the best DPS out of a trio of him, Pelican and Flora. Hell, he made Pelican flex around his hero pool, because Proper was better on Tracer and Echo. He is absurdly good. The same can be said for his teammates, Kilo and Finn, as they weren't carried by him at all despite his skill. Sam is the odd man out a bit, but he still pounds to hell and back. Add in 2 of the best players in league history, Super and Violet, and 2 of the best coaches in the league, Krusty and Ninek, reuniting, and you have a championship roster right there. The only things holding the team back is that, while I dispelled it a bit earlier, the rookies are still unproven against the very top. I feel like they won't have issues with the teams below the tier, but can Proper stand up against Flitter or leave? Can Kilo stand up to Nzorkai? Sam to Nero or Sparkle? That, as well as the fact the roster is incomplete. They still need a main support and off-tank. Hot take though, even if they just make Violet the starting main support, if they get a good enough off-tank they'll still be top tier. Anyway, on to number 2, the Los Angeles Gladiators. I'll go on record saying that they absolutely rival the Fuel, and I wouldn't be surprised at all to find that they've surpassed them by the end of the season. The Gladiators are absolutely cracked. While they side-degraded or slightly downgraded their tanklins, they've upgraded their DPS, supports and coaching, on top of what was already a top 5 roster in the world last year. These guys look scary. However, I can't put them over Fuel for a few reasons, mainly that we need to see how people perform. Cannons regain his 2020 form? Can Pain become the force of nature he once was? How does Rhino compare to Muzz? How does Face do as head coach? There are a bunch of questions, but if people can perform to their potential they can easily rival Dallas and Shanghai for the top, and they have too many talented pieces to put any lower. These guys are absurd. Get ready. Number 1 is the Dallas Fuel. I know it's the boring answer, but I have to give it to them. They've really done nothing but upgrade. They had a clear Hitscan and Tracer hole last year, and they picked up a promising rookie and a talented veteran to fill both gaps. Jex wasn't flexible enough, so they picked up a rookie who is probably as good as Jex on the Lucio, but has a mean Mercy and Bridget as well. They lost Hong but picked up Rascal, who can teach new heroes. These guys are only going up from here, and these are the guys who were at the top of now all year.
My only issue with them is that I don't think the DPS they picked up are as good as the rest of the roster. Edison's Tracer has been outclassed pretty hard by the rest of the league, and Guriyo wasn't top tier even in contenders. I think they will still be better, but I think the DPS will be the weakest part of the team, which is pretty insane considering they have Sparkle and Doha. Here is a recap. Feel free to let me know if there's anything you disagree with, and also comment if there are any specific matchups you want me to go over more in depth on. Thanks for watching, and remember to like and subscribe for more. I upload almost daily Overwatch League videos and am hoping to hit 100 subs by Season 5, so any subscription helps greatly. Thanks.